Hello everyone. Today I will be testing the Insta360 X4 low light capabilities. This is 8K 30 frames per second to see how much ISO you need to use at a shutter speed of 1/60th of a second is the lowest acceptable shutter speed to not get blurry movements inside your videos. The next thing is I'll be comparing it to this lux meter on my phone. You could just get it, Arduino Science Journal it's called, so that you can test this in your house before you buy it. So here we have my basement. It's very, very dark. I mean, I guess according to the meter, but in real life it's very light. Like, it looks normal. The way it works is that our eyes open up more when there's low light and less when they close a little bit when there's a lot of light. So we can't really tell so much the difference between inside and outside. You know, it's a little bit brighter outside, but we can't really see how much darker it is inside. We can still see very well inside, but cameras, they're very limited and they have much smaller sensors. And so for them, it makes a very, very big difference. Cameras are much more sensitive to low light versus a lot of light. And so the way we can tell that is with this lux meter on our phone. And you could test this at your own house before you buy the Insta360 X4. That's the goal of this video. So this is 8K, first of all, 30 frames per second. This is my basement. So my basement, when I put the lux meter just straight ahead, it says around 62 lux. So 62 lux. Just for comparison, outside it's around 10,000 to 100,000 when you're looking at the sun. So this is 62, so this is like much, much less. And so right now, the Insta360 is set to 1/60th of a second shutter speed and 604 ISO. I'm sorry, my lens is a little blurry. There we go, that should be slightly better. I don't know if it's better. I have the lens guards on and they're not so clean. Anyway, so this is what the basement looks like with a lux of around 70 to 60. You know, now it's reading 25. You know, now when I go into this room, the lux is about 7 or 10. So this is very, very dark, but it's actually pretty good for such low ISO at such high shutter speeds. Okay, so here we have still 1/60th of a second. I think I'm gonna keep it at that the whole video. Another good one is 120 frames per second, but 1/60th of a second is good. Still the lux is, you know, it's 100 when you point it at the light bulbs, and 30 to 40 when you just point it straight ahead. And this is the ISO at the highest setting for me, which is 1600 ISO. Also, another thing is with smaller sensor sizes like this camera, it not only does it not let in as much light like a DSLR, they're much better in low light, but also when you put up the ISO, it's much more sensitive and it adds a lot more noise than a DSLR with its bigger sensor size. It's much less noticeable, the ISO. Some people want the ISO to be at 400, but this is the highest ISO setting, 1600. And you can see there's a lot of like noise in the image, but things are they're not super dark. They're not super dark. Yeah, it's not so dark. Let's go back into this room with about 10 lux. The ISO at the max setting. So this is pretty dark to my eyes. It looks totally normal. I can see everything. Yeah. And just for the record, this is 5.7K, 30 frames per second, 1/60th of a shutter speed, and 640 ISO. The same as before, but now it's 5.7K. Now let's go back into this room with the 7 ISO. I mean 7 lux is very, very dark. Let's see, getting closer to things. I don't even know if you could read these stuff. Chemistry things. Here's the light bulb. And this is just completely black. But this is a very, very, very low lux. This is 10 lux versus outside it's around, 50,000 lux. Okay, so we have moved to this den room. And so the lux in here is about 150 to 200. When I pointed at the window, it goes up to 500. As you can see, the window is totally blown out. But when you look at this other stuff, and when I turn around and look at the toys, it goes around to 195. So this is what 100 lux looks like. When we go into this room, it goes down to 192. And so this is what that looks like. This is my living room. This is just an average room, and it's very low light. The windows are about 200, 300 lux, 500. And our settings are set at 400 ISO and 1/60 shutter speed, 8K. Here's the piano. You see it's like kind of dark. It's around 40 lux. And the windows are about 500 lux. And they're completely blown out. Just for the record, I lowered the ISO all the way to its lowest, which is 100, still at 1/60th of a second. And now the inside is completely dark and the outside is still blown out. So right now we're gonna have to start hiring the shutter speed. This is ISO 100 at about 100 lux. Okay, we are now outside in my backyard, and as you can see, it's much brighter. So right now we're about at, I don't know if you can see this, about 5,000 lux when I hold it sideways, and about 100,000 lux when I point it towards the sky. Let's go into the shade. Yeah, when I look at this place, it's about 4,000 to 2,000 lux when I point it at the plants. Even going down to 1,000 lux. So our settings are ISO 100, the lowest, and 1/1000 shutter speed. Before we had 1/60, now we have 1/1000. And so as you can see, everything is bright, but the shutter speed is much, much higher. This is where you can get like kind of like fast motion videos, and you can wave your camera around as much as you want, and you're not going to have any problems. So everyone always says you can set your settings to automatic when you're outside, when it's sunny, but once you're inside, oh look, okay, now when I point, the clouds just came in, and it's around 20,000 lux when I pointed at the sky. I don't know if you guys can see this. Now it just went up to 100,000 lux. When I put it in the shade, it goes down to 15,000 lux. When I point it at the sun, it's 100,000 lux. Yeah, so when you put it outside, it doesn't really matter because your ISO is going to be the lowest, and the shutter speed can change from 200 to 1,000, and it's not gonna matter so much for your video. It doesn't matter. But once you get inside and you're in low light, then it's like, oh darn, everything kind of changes. And just so everyone knows the difference between lux and lumens. When you're going out and you're buying a light for yourself, it's all going to be in lumens, but right now with these sensors, it's in lux. And lumens is basically how much light a certain object emits, and lux is how much light is hitting the camera sensor. So let's say this light bulb, it emits 100 lumens or whatever. I don't know how much it actually emits, but how much is hitting the camera sensor would be a certain amount of lux. So when you buy lights, then it's all in lumens, but when you buy cameras, it's all in sensors, it's all in lux. Okay, and here I'm doing one last test. The sun's behind a cloud right now, but we're at 5.7K and we're in auto. I'm gonna show you the problem with auto. When you're outside, everything's totally fine. With 8K, it'll just be higher resolution, but everything would still be fine. We're about 12,000 lux right now. it's all good. Also, there was this setting, low light stabilization on, so I just turned that on. This is still auto. The ISO is pretty high, and right here we have about 35 to 95 lux. And then when I go downstairs, it ends up being 52, 40, and we're still in auto 5.7K, so we have the highest, we have low light and we have low light stabilization. And now it's at 45 lux, and when I move back and forth, I don't know if you could really see it, but things should be starting to get like really blurry, and there should be a very high ISO. Then we move into here, it's around 3 lux, 4 lux, and things might be really blurry, even though I turned on the low light stabilization anti-blur thing. I've never seen that before, so I'm not sure how it's going to affect the footage, but yeah, that's the final test.